Well, good evening. It is Saturday evening, and it is June 26th. And today we're going to take a look at it is our Friday devotional based on the Revised Common Lectionary. We find ourselves, this is the one of the Sundays following Pentecost. We are still in the season of ordinary time. We are still in Mark's Gospel, kind of following right along where we were. We've been following this pattern of being in Mark's Gospel and walking through Mark's Gospel. And so we find ourselves today in Mark chapter 5 at verse 21. Now, I heard a great sermon several years ago from this particular passage. And the question I want to ask is this: what happens when someone interrupts your miracle? What happens when all of a sudden it looks like God is about to step into your miracle, and all of a sudden someone else steps into your miracle? That's what we got going on here in this particular passage. There are two healings that are about to happen. One where a miracle is interrupted, another miracle happens, and it kind of leaves our main character like, what just happened? What happened to my miracle? And so I want to take a look at this as we do this morning or this afternoon, evening. It's Saturday, as we get ready for Pentecost. Mark chapter 5, verse 21. Jesus got into the boat again. Now, this is just after Jesus has healed the demon-possessed man named Legion. So Jesus got into the boat again and went back to the other side of the lake where a large crowd had gathered around him on the shore. Then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. When he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet, pleading fervently with him. "My little daughter is dying," he said. "Please come lay your hands on her, heal her so she can live." So we got the setup here. This man, this religious leader from the synagogue, has come to Jesus to ask for healing for his daughter. Verse 24, Jesus went with him. Jesus went with him. And all the people followed, crowding around him. All right, so Jesus was with this. They had never heard the word social distancing, so they were all crowding around him, jostling for position. And so everybody was touching each other. A woman in the crowd, verse 25, a woman in the crowd who had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had had to pay them, but she had gotten no better. So we have this woman who has been sick for 12 years. That's a long time to be sick. She's gone to the doctor and after the doctor and the doctor and the doctor, and she's still sick. In fact, Mark says she'd gotten worse. So she had heard about Jesus. So she came up behind him through the crowd. She forced her way through the crowd and touched his robe. For she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. Talk about faith. Jairus had gone to Jesus and pleaded and begged Jesus to come heal his daughter. Now this woman comes and she says, if I can just touch his robe, I will be well. Talk about your faith. Both of these people exhibited a great deal of faith. Now, in verse 29, immediately the bleeding stopped. So immediately she is healed. When she touched Jesus' robe, she's immediately healed. And she'd been healed of her terrible condition. Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out of him, and so he turned around in the crowd and asked, "Who touched my robe?" Now, remember how I described it. There was just people on all sides. They were all crowded in, and the disciples are like, "Jesus, we don't know. Who touched your robe? Look at the crowd pressing around you. How can you ask who touched my robe?" I thought this is really interesting because there were lots of people touching Jesus and they didn't get healed. But this woman says, "Yes, I want to touch his robe for the point of being healed." She was very intentional about it. Immediately, she's healed. But he kept looking around. Jesus is looking around, looking for who done it. "How can you ask who touched me?" He looked around to see who had done it. Then the frightened woman, I can only imagine when he gets, who did that? I'm sure she was like, "Oh no, I'm in huge trouble now." Trembling at the realization of what had happened to her, came and fell on her knees. Same position that Jairus had just done earlier, begging for the healing. He told her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace. Your suffering is over." Now, can you imagine what? Now, this is really cool. I mean, just the faith of that woman. She touched her robe, and now she was cowering in fear, trembling in fear that she had done something wrong. And Jesus says, "No, you're healed. Go. Go." Now, can you imagine you're Jairus? Your daughter's dying. She's sick. And somebody interrupted your miracle. But Jesus isn't done yet. While he was still speaking to her, messengers arrived from the home of Jairus, the leader of the synagogue, and they told him, "Your daughter's dead. Go home." Now how do you feel about your miracle being interrupted? The very reason you went is now, it's over. It's over. There's no use in troubling the teacher now. But Jesus overheard them and said to Jairus, "Don't be afraid. Just have faith." We've heard a lot of this phrase, faith over fear, have we not? We've heard it a lot. Faith over fear, faith over fear. Jesus is now saying to Jairus, faith over fear. Do not be afraid. Just have faith. Sometimes we can use that as a catchphrase. But in this case, Jesus is saying, you need to have faith, just like that woman who interrupted your miracle had faith that she was going to be healed. You need to have faith. Then Jesus stopped the crowd, said, stay here. He wouldn't let anyone go with him except Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. And when they came to the home of the synagogue leader, Jesus saw much commotion and weeping and wailing. He went inside and asked, why all of this commotion and weeping? The child isn't dead, she's only asleep. Don't be afraid, just have faith. The crowd laughed at him. Apparently they didn't know Jesus very well. He made them all leave. He put them out. He took the girl's father and mother and his 3 disciples into the room where the girl was lying. So he only wanted the faithful, the people who knew about what was about to happen. And hold her hand. He said to her, Talitha cum, which means little girl, get up. And the girl who was 12 years old immediately stood up and walked around. Don't be afraid. Just have faith. And they were overwhelmed and totally amazed. Jesus gave them strict orders not to tell anyone what had happened, and then he told them to give her something to eat. 2 healings, both in response to faith. Jairus, and I think what's really cool about this is neither one of them looked the same way. They were completely different. Jairus had went to seek Jesus, pleaded. The woman just said, if I can just touch the hem of his robe. And she was not the only person healed in that way. It talks about it. There were people who were just touching Jesus' robe and being healed. Luke records that. But there are times when we think our miracle is being interrupted. Jairus definitely felt like his miracle. Where's my miracle? And I know that in previous pastorates, we had a couple, and one was healed, and the other wasn't. And I remember her kind of asking that question: well, where's my miracle? And it's tough when somebody interrupts your miracle and they get the blessing and you don't. And I think that's when we need to remember Jesus' words. Don't be afraid. Just have faith. Your time's coming. Your time's coming. Don't be afraid. Just have faith. Perhaps yours is a miracle interrupted. So it is important when we struggle with why to remember that God calls us to have faith. And it's a faith that is more than just, it's a, if I can just get I know I'll be healed if I can just touch the garment. Both of these healings required action. It's more than just have faith. It was faith and action locked in together. It's what James says. James says, show me your faith without action. Action and faith are linked together. Both Jairus and the woman put their faith into action. They reached out. They took a risk. They were healed. God bless. Go in peace to love and serve